Hi everybody. I hope everybody is doing well and in good spirits, and a very happy Thanksgiving to all of you. As the title is suggesting, I've never really saw the value in having to carry one of these items. Let me just give you a little bit of background. As most of you may already know, I've been shooting black powder guns, at this point I dare say forever. And in all the years and all the hundreds of thousands of shots that I've taken, I've never ever broken a ramrod. Now, I've had friends of mine shoot my gun and break the ramrod, but I've never personally done it, because for me, I've learned over the years to take short strokes with a wooden ramrod. And if you pay attention on the shooting line, you'll see some people take real long strokes. Well, typically, that's how you might end up fracturing a ramrod. Now, as I mentioned in my Frozen Foot video, with my smoothbore, my Frankenstein gun, I experienced some problems. In fact, I even forsook taking the last two shots. Now, you may recall, this is the first time I've ever competed with this gun. I typically do, week-long rendezvous. When I was in Wisconsin, any smoothbore shooting that I've done, it was always with someone else's firearm, because I've never had a smoothbore. But the issue that I had was, number one, after about the sixth shot. Now, bear in mind, I took two shots at the tiebreaker. So by the time I got to round, number 7 on the station of gongs, I had already shot 9 shots. And at that point, I was already experiencing a little bit of difficulty in loading the gun. And I kind of got a little aggravated, because I found myself having to take a brush and run a brush down the bore. The next couple of shots were fine, but right there and then it got bound up again. And I kind of got a little aggravated and forced and did something that I don't normally do. Take a long stroke with the ramrod, and as you can see, I've got electrical tape at the very end of it. It didn't snap it in two, but it did enough damage that I could not use it again. And one of the issues that I had with it at that time is the driving device that I use for driving driving the ball down the barrel is that device right there. It's basically a shotgun tip is what it is. And I've since reduced the size of this, because this was like about 20 thousandths under the size of the bore on this barrel. And what actually happened is I took a long stroke, and instead of coming straight down, I angled it just a little bit, and I wedged it on the inside of the walls of the smoothbore, and that's when it snapped. So at that point, and yes, I made myself a new hickory ramrod, pig nut hickory, which is going to suffice. But at that point, because the round ball was about this far down into the barrel, I found myself in need of a range rod. And the guys that I shoot with, they all carry a range rod, and like I said, I've never ever snapped a ramrod. Now I find myself in need of a range rod to at least finish the last shot or two that I needed to do, and more precisely to get that ball down on top of the powder charge. So I did that. I took the shot, and it was at that point that I said I had enough. I wasn't going to take the last two shots. So on my way home, I convinced myself that I should now start carrying a range rod. And being the cheap sort of fellow that I am, I could not see myself buying a range rod, specifically when I could make one myself. So, having done a lot of blacksmithing over the years and having a lot of metal collected, I decided to go through my junk pile and see if I could find some, 3/8 rod that I could easily make into a range rod. And lo and behold, I had nothing. It's like, darn, what do I do now? Think, what have you got? Well, a couple years back, on my property, I've got one of those outside water valves. You lift the pump handle, the rod comes up, and it gets that little ball off the seat and water comes up and through. Well, I ended up having to replace that water valve years ago. And since I do blacksmithing, I don't throw anything away. So I thought, I got a 3/8 rod sitting somewhere in my shop, and after a little while of looking and moving a whole bunch of crap out of the way, I found it. And I had to do some work, and here again, it's if you are finding yourself in need to make one, this might be a source material for you. Now, obviously, I had to cut some of the length off, and this mic'd out really at .380. And not knowing the inside diameter of the guide cone, I elected to go a lot smaller than .380 because that's what this rod measured at. Now, the camera's probably not going to pick it up. Let me come around and get a close-up view. But the rod on the outside is very rough and very crude. So what I did is I took a file and I just knocked off the high points. Just took a file, went back and forth, knocked off the high points, kind of got it round. Then I chucked it in my drill and I put the drill in my vise, hit the on trigger, and then I locked it in the on position. So while this is turning, I used 100 grit, 120, 220, and got it down to something that I knew was gonna fit inside that guide cone. Let me get back around and I'll show you. So right now, this rod, my dial calipers, mics out at .370, at least at this point. And the front of it, it mics out at .371. So there again, I know that I'm well under the 3/8 of the guide cone because it slips all the way through, slides all the way through. And obviously, having been a trader for many, many decades, I have a large source of deer antler, and that's what I epoxied on the handle. And what I did to actually keep that in place is I took my grinder with a very thin blade and kind of cut notches at an angle going in both directions so that when I epoxied it, the epoxy's got something to grab onto. So, and I know when I make knives, I kind of do that same thing. That way the tang of the knife really locks into the deer handle as I epoxy it. Now, one of the things that I really liked about choosing this for the rod, for the range rod, is that one end of these rods already have a very long piece of 3/8 brass. And you'll see that on this end right there. So obviously, I cut it down to a respectable length. But what's nice about it is because it's soft brass, I was able to drill a hole in it and tap it for the 1032 threads, which is what all of my accoutrements are. My ball puller, my brush, my worm. So that way there, I can use the range rod if I need to clean the gun also. So anyhow, I guess that's really all I want to say about that. Other than the fact, I kind of changed things up a little bit with my Lyman's Great Plains, my 54 caliber, because I've been experimenting a little bit with having a patch over the powder. Now I get it. When you're shooting offhand, you're not always going to hit the same hole with a patch over the powder, but I just kind of wanted to play with that, so I changed up the way I normally load my gun, and I dry balled it. Now I got to admit, that's only the second time in all the years that I've been shooting black powder guns that I've done that. Fortunately, another friend of mine in camp happened to have one of those little CO2 dischargers, and that did the trick. And in fact, what I did is, before I got to that point, I put a little bit of powder in the snail, snapped the cap in the ball, made it to about 8 inches before exiting the barrel. I tried putting more gunpowder into the snail, snapping a cap, but I could not dislodge it. So fortunately, the friend of mine in camp had one of those CO2 dislodgers, and I was very pleased at how easy it was to get the ball out of the barrel. So I might be looking into investing into one of those. I probably may never need it, but hey, what do they say? Third time's the charm. So maybe the next rendezvous, maybe I'll dry ball it on purpose just to see how those CO2 dischargers work. But there again, we had no problem discharging that round ball. So I hope everybody will have a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody is doing fine and well, and I hope you will take a minute just to like and subscribe, and be willing to share this with your bestest of buddies, because at this point, this range rod is now going with me to every rendezvous that I intend in competing with, just in case. Save the time, save the energy in making a new ramrod, and I did make the end piece a lot narrower, so that it's less likely to bind and catch the sides of the tube inside the smoothbore barrel. So anyhow, friends, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for watching. So just an afterthought here real quick. If anybody's interested, I will be putting this shooting pouch up on my Etsy store. And as you can see, if you watched the previous videos, I did decide to cut out the double weeping hearts, and also to do a little bit more beadwork and sew in a Thunderbird. And I also went ahead and made a little pouch that has a burning lens in it. You see that right there beaded. And then on the other strap is another little pouch that I have a flat flint striker. So if you're interested in it, check back into my Etsy store, Lane Beaver Trading Company on Etsy, and you'll see the pouch. And you friends have a great day. Bye.